All right, building off of our talk on schema theory, we're going to talk about two ideas here with top-down and bottom-up processing, which represent some of the hardest for students to understand throughout the year, which is why I put it into its own separate presentation. So we're going to go over it. Again, I expect questions. I know this is something that is not easy to always understand. All right, so top-down versus bottom-up processing. There's two different types of processing, and these represent two of the main theories about how we process information about the world, which then gets added into our schemas. So the first one, top-down or indirect processing, it says that perception involves cognitive processing that goes beyond just sensory input. Oftentimes, our past experiences impact how we process the world, and that would seem to be backed up by schema theory. Bottom-up processing, on the other hand, says that perception arises directly from sensory input without further cognitive processing. So we see something, our brain attempts to make sense of it, and we add more details onto that particular thing as more information is added. So bottom-up processing, we're going to start off with. This was developed by Gibson in 1966, but he argued that there was enough information in the optical array, so the light coming into our eyes, that perception could occur without higher level cognitive processing. We can make sense of something without having to think about all the things that we would tie into that, and without having to use some higher order thinking or higher order deciding skills in order to perceive them and process them. And it is aided by a person's movements and those of surrounding objects. And to Gibson, this was an innate experience. So when you're a baby, when you come into contact with a pacifier for the first time, oftentimes you're trying to make sense of it based on just the contextual clues of how does it feel, how does it touch. That's why so many babies, not with pacifiers, but with everything, try to put it in their mouth. They're trying to make sense of their world by using sensory information. They're trying to add into their perception of the world by adding in this sensory information. And he believed that perception was a bottom-up process. Our schemas are created directly from sensory data and from our ability to see, touch, taste, smell, all of those. And then as the process moves upward, as the mind pieces together details, it pieces together individual elements and works into a whole. So this picture of railroad tracks is an example of bottom-up processing and Gibson's theory. As soon as we see this, we see the tracks converging, and it helps us to perceive distance. And all we need to see is the train tracks to come to this conclusion. And then we see rocks, and our brains piece together this information and allow us to think about the texture of the railroad tracks. And then we see the mountains in the background, which tell us potential height distances and stuff like that. And it also tells us distance as well from where we're at in the picture. So in terms of evaluating Gibson's bottom-up processing theory, it does explain, and this is a strength, how perception occurs quickly, which other theories cannot. Although Gibson cannot fully explain why something like a visual illusion is perceived. Why does our mind play these tricks on us in this way? But he dismissed them as artificial lab constructions. However, there's some that occur just naturally out in the world, whether something is drawn or not. Sort of like the blue dress, gold dress, or blue dress, white dress, picture from a few years ago on social media. And this is the idea that the optical array provides direct information about what objects permit individuals to do really seems unlikely. We would have to have more information to know how it works. You know, the first time you see a bike, it's not like your brain immediately says, oh, I can do this, right? You have to see potentially other people do it. You have to learn more about how a bike operates. Maybe you have past experiences with like a tricycle, and knowing that you won't necessarily fall off. You know, all of those things are important. All right, so what I want you to do is to look at these three pictures. I'm going to keep it on this slide for a few seconds. And just say to yourself what you see first. I want your immediate reaction. I would say that most of you might have seen the duck. Maybe not all of you, but most of you might have seen the duck because I've primed you for seeing the duck, right? I have given you context clues beforehand by these pictures of the lake, and there's a few ducks in some of the pictures that you might be more attuned, and your schemas might be more queued up for the duck. Um, and this is an example of top-down processing. This was developed by Gregory in 1970. And it says that perception is an unconscious, ongoing process. You didn't consciously think, I'm going to immediately say duck, but you probably did because of how your schema was queued up. And this is guessing based on what is best based on past experiences. And we search for the best answer. It's often an indirect process in that it goes beyond just data provided by sensory information. We oftentimes will go based on what our past experiences are in order to process an event occurring. That's why for some people, like, if they were around a lot of loud noises, a lot of explosions, that sort of stuff, to hear a bang from even like a pop can going, or a soda can, I should say. My Ohio roots are showing off. A pop can being thrown into a garbage can, or a bottle being thrown into a garbage can, and that sets them off. That's not just a sensory reaction. That is past experiences telling them that the probability for something greater or more dangerous is higher. And the example for this, other than the one I just said, were that visual illusions occur because there is a confusion in seeing both figures. Your mind wants to decide on one correct answer, and so it uses past experiences to get there. So part of top-down theory is this idea of perceptual schema, and this is the belief that individuals are biased in how they perceive because of past experiences, our cultural factors, and also our emotional and motivational influences. In short, people see what they want or expect to see. And on an emotional level, harmful stimuli, and by stimuli, we mean like sensory information, can take longer to perceive. And also, in terms of motivation, perception will often influence or be influenced by factors like hunger. I know if I'm hungry, I probably shouldn't go to the grocery store. And so our perception of what we need based on that, because oftentimes people will buy a lot more at the grocery store if they go in there hungry than if they go in there full. And this is especially true if you like the food. So in terms of evaluating top-down processing, the theory really increased the understanding of perception. It does seem logical, especially based on schema theory, that interpretations are based on previous experience would occur when viewing conditions that are incomplete or ambiguous. If you are walking down the street, you are making certain probability choices based on the time of day, based on past experiences. Maybe you've been robbed before, and if anything reminds you of those things, then that may change your perception and how you process an event occurring. There is a criticism, though. Most of the research on the theory have been done in lab settings. And so might it be richer? Might there be more ecological validity if it happened in real world situation? And then most people's perceptions are similar of most things. And so um, it sort of weakens support for this individual differences based on past experiences argument. And then the cognitive energy that top-down processing uh, says occurs being spent looking for the right answer in our mind would be taxing on the self. And so we most likely use a combination of both experiences, both bottom-up and top-down processing. All right, so this is just a little review here. So again, bottom-up processing, taking sensory information and then assembling it and integrating it. And then top-down processing using past experiences, models, ideas, expectations to interpret sensory information. So asking the question to yourself, is that something I've seen before and where does it fit into my schemas? All right, if you have any questions at all or confusion over top-down and bottom-up processing, please come find me. Other than that, please have a great day.